When we're looking at identifying your beneficial owners in your company, okay, step one would be to identify individuals who exercise substantial control pursuant to this substantial control test, right? Those who exercise substantial control over the company and its operations or its assets. So those are the individuals you would identify in step one. Step two would be to identify ownership interests, those who own or hold ownership interests. Okay. And then once we identify those with ownership interests, then we have to calculate what percentage ownership interest they have, and that would be step three. Okay. And we're looking for people or owners, beneficial owners, that own or control directly or indirectly at least 25% of the ownership interests of the company. Okay. So when we look at their examples, and we'll use their examples just so that it's easy for you to actually see, okay, we have individuals. Let's go through step one. Individuals who exercise substantial control over the company. Okay. Ways to exercise substantial control. Board representation. So if you have board representation, so board of directors, they make decisions about the company, right? And they have board meetings on a regular basis, they make decisions and so forth. So we're looking at the board of directors. Ownership or control of a majority of voting power or voting rights. Okay, so we're looking at voting rights. Who in the company has voting rights, right? Because with voting rights, you exercise control. And then rights associated with financing or an interest. Okay, so we have financing or an interest. So do they have, a financial interest in the company? Meaning, are they, an equity owner? Do they have a profits interest? Okay. And so forth. Do they have a right to, exercise, leverage assets? Okay. That's direct ways. When we look at indirect ways, we're looking at maybe arrangements or controlling one or more intermediary entities, okay, that separately or collectively exercise substantial control. So indirect would basically be, let's say you own, there is one entity that is, maybe you have a LLC. Lots of times we layer LLCs, okay? So you have one LLC that exercises control over another LLC. So, and some states allow multiple LLCs. So, we layer a number of them. But for all intents and purposes, you have one entity that exercises control over different entities. Okay. You might also have arrangements or financial business relationships with other individuals or entities that are really acting as a nominee. Okay. So indirect control would be, an entity that's acting as a nominee for a specific arrangement. Okay. Or business relationship. It gets quite complicated, and I recommend that you actually contact an attorney in your state to look at your specific situation if you have a complex situation. Lots of times small businesses really don't. It's quite clear who the owners are, who has substantial control over the entity and the operations and so forth. But in the case that you have multiple entities involved, you do have to take a look at that. And I suggest you contact an attorney. Okay. When we look at trusts, a trustee, and when we set up companies, we do. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll set up a company and then we will have the trust become the owner of the interest in the company. And that's so that we can plan for succession and that the operations of the company are not disturbed by the individual passing away, that the trustee actually steps into the shoes, okay, of the owner. So in that case, the trustee may in fact exercise substantial control, particularly in a smaller business, because they really do step into managing and exercising control of the operations of the company, while after the individual who was the original beneficial owner, or let's say if the trust is an owner, that you know they are, if the trust is in place because someone died, or the trust is in place for business succession, that for all intents and purposes the trustee is acting in an active capacity and to exercise substantial control over the business and the operations. Okay, so it's very important to take a look at that. Okay. When we look at the substantial control questions, and I love this guide because it does give you step-by-step check the box answers, right? And it does help you. So I suggest you go through it. But page 20 on the current guide, goes through substantial control. Does your company have a president, chief financial officer, general counsel, chief executive officer, or operating officer? If you check yes, it's a senior company, a senior officer, right? Does your company have other officers that perform functions similar to those? President, chief financial officer, general counsel, so forth. Okay, as a limited liability company, you would say yes. Yeah, there are people that step into those shoes. One individual may perform one or more functions. I mean, you might have a president that acts as a financial officer, right? So, or a president that acts as general counsel. So keep in mind, or you have a managing member of a limited liability company, and he's acting in many capacities. Okay, so we have that. But if they are considered senior officers. So if you check yes, they're a senior officer. They have to be reported. Does your company have a board of directors or similar body? Okay, so we have a board of directors, or you can, in a limited liability company, you could have a board, or you can call it a board of directors. You can have a board that provides input and so forth. And though, qualification here is, and does any individual have the ability to appoint or remove a majority of that board or body? Okay, so we're looking at someone that has the capacity to appoint or remove a board. Okay. Does the individual have the ability to appoint or remove a senior officer of the company? Okay. If so, then they have appointment or removal authority, right? So if they can appoint a board or remove a majority of the board or change the members in that board, then they have appointment or removal authority. If they have the ability to appoint or remove a senior officer, then they also have that appointment or removal authority, right? Does any individual direct, determine, or have substantial influence over important business decisions made by the company itself? So, regard to business, finances, structure, we already discussed that in a previous video, is that do they have the ability to affect the business that is conducted, basically? affect the business operations, the finances, the structure. If so, they are important decision makers and they must be disclosed, right? So, regular employees, again, that receive a salary are not included. They are not important decision makers. Okay. Now, are there any individuals who have substantial control over the company in other ways? Okay. And that, sort of a catch-all provision. I mean, basically, can they affect your operations? Can they make business decisions? Can they, direct, where your company is doing business, how it's doing business, and so forth? If so, they could fall under the catch-all provision. Okay. Once you've completed this step and reviewed all of these, examples with regard to control, then you must, if you checked yes, the individuals that you have identified will be reported as beneficial owners. And what I suggest you do is to take this and list everyone that you would say yes to. Okay, so go through and write out and document, all these individuals that are involved with your company. Okay, list the senior officers. Go through each question and write down who those people are. Okay, with regard to appointment or removal authority, make sure you list those people. When we look at important decision makers, list those people. Okay, and then you can select. You can go through and you can verify the information and ensure that these people are in fact people that need to be reported, so that it also ensures that you're not going to forget to list someone, right? Okay. And then step 2 would be to go through individuals who directly own or control ownership interests, and we will discuss that in another video.